Well, good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us on the show at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Always happy to take your calls. Starting right now, I'm going to play for you a conversation recorded just a little bit earlier today with Tucker Carlson, formerly of Fox News, now with the Tucker Carlson Network. Part one of our interview begins right now, and part two is coming up at 5 o'clock. Take a listen. All right, joining me on the phone now, Tucker Carlson. You can find him now these days at tuckercarlson.com, which is where you can subscribe to the Tucker Carlson Network. Tucker, thanks for doing this, man. Good to talk to you today.
Oh, it's my honor to do it. Are you kidding? It's my favorite radio show in the world. So thank you for having me.
Oh, man, thank you very much. Hey, first of all, it's always tough interviewing you, I have to admit. I don't know if you have this experience, but since I've known you for so long, I worked with you, and I'm pretty much aware of most of the things you believe in. It's actually kind of challenging to interview you because in an interview you're trying to plow new ground, and I honestly sometimes I run into I'm like, I'm not sure what new ground I should cover with him.
Yeah, trust me, I talk too much already, so I have left few things unsaid in my life.
Well, let's begin with a conversation we haven't had, which is the breaking news last night that Colorado has decided, a series of left-wing judges, to purge Donald Trump from the ballot. They don't want voters to have the choice of Donald Trump in the interest, of course, of defending democracy. I was digging into this, and I discovered, you might not be surprised to find out, that basically this is all big national left-wing operation run by the David Brock crew and literally the organization crew and all of their left-wing dark money donors. This isn't about democracy, is it?
Well, of course, it's the end of democracy if it happens, and you sort of mourn the fact that as Trump is being targeted because those letters shut a lot of people's brains down, and their only goal is to stop Trump, and certainly a lot of Americans agree with them on that. So people don't pause long enough to think about what this is. I mean, as a legal case, and I say this as a non-lawyer, a confirmed non-lawyer, it's ridiculous. They're citing the 14th Amendment, which was written in 1868 to prevent former Confederate officials from holding office. But the 14th Amendment specifically does not apply to the presidency. Okay, so it's inapplicable there. The third section of that amendment refers to insurrection, which is why they've been calling Trump an insurrectionist for 3 years, since January 6th. He, of course, did not lead an insurrection because he wasn't there. He called for peace, and whatever happened on January 6, 2021 was not an insurrection. It wasn't. The people didn't have guns, and there was no plan to overthrow the government. Those are confirmed facts, so it's not an opinion. They had a years-long investigation into it. No plan. So it was not an insurrection. Trump did not lead it. But the most significant fact to me is that Trump has never been convicted or even charged with insurrection. And so what they're saying, and what ghouls like David Frum and the Atlantic Magazine and the rest of the chorus cheering this, what they're saying is that it's okay to punish someone for a crime he's never even been charged with, much less convicted of. So, okay, is that the standard? If Joe Scarborough doesn't like you and does a particularly fiery segment on Morning Joe, does that mean that you can be sent to prison? No. You have to be charged and convicted with a crime in order to be punished for it. You can't punish people for crimes they haven't been convicted of, period. Or else the entire justice system is meaningless. That's the question of democracy. Democracy is a system, and there are varieties of it. Well, there haven't been many democracies in human history, but to the extent we've had them, the core idea, whatever the system, whether it's a direct democracy or representative democracy, is that every citizen gets to vote, and that's how he expresses his wishes, and the government reflects those wishes. So if people are prevented from voting for the candidate of their choice, it may be a lot of things. It's not a democracy by definition. It can't be a democracy. You can't prevent people from voting for the candidate of their choice because the people rule.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the end of democracy if it happens. And of course, it's being orchestrated by the self-described defenders of democracy. And the last thing I'll say is that it proves what a lot of us had begun to suspect, which is whatever they're accusing you of is exactly the crime they're committing. So they're running around saying they're defending democracy against the wreckers of democracy, the threats to democracy, when they're literally trying to end the precept that defines democracy, which is you get to vote for your choice of representative because it's your country. But no, you can't. You're not allowed to vote for this person because people on TV don't like him. Never been charged, never been convicted, but the Colorado Supreme Court, which is a very official sounding body, though unelected, has confirmed that the accusation is enough to punish someone. And I just think this is like the end of our justice system and the end of representative democracy if it's allowed to happen. And I don't know why, of all the candidates, only Vivek Ramaswamy, who's never been a politician before, and Bobby Kennedy, who was a liberal Democrat until like a year ago, they're the only ones who've made this point. And everyone else is like kind of tepid. The guy from Florida is like, well, it seems kind of wrong to me. You know, the fat guy from New Jersey is like, I don't really know. The lady from South Carolina, the warlust person who's owned by Boeing, she's like, well, I'm not really sure. I mean, it's not about Trump. It's not about the 2024 election. Right. It's about the preservation of our core systems, which are the Justice Department and electoral democracy.
Right.
If you're wondering what the U.S. is, that's what it is.
And it's also yet another test for Joe Biden, isn't it? Because if Biden truly believed in defending the integrity of the system, he'd condemn this today in public. He'd say, no, you don't do that. I'm going against this guy in an election, and I'll let the voters decide.
Of course. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a confirmation of a lot of things. One, that the ruling party will do literally anything, including shoot people. They murdered Ashley Babbitt and then celebrated it to hold power. They shot an unarmed woman who posed no threat, was like 5'5", a military veteran, and then they cheered it and called the guy who murdered her a hero. So that tells you their intent right there. It's to kill you, right, obviously. And so that we know that. And we also know that all this talk about the uniparty and the deep state, it's all completely true. Because the Republican Party ought to recognize, no matter how much they hate Trump or love him, it doesn't matter. Trump doesn't matter. It's our country. Our country matters. Our lives matter. Our children's lives matter. The hope of having grandchildren and raising them in a country that resembles the one we grew up in, that matters. And no one is defending that. No one, except for people on the relative fringes like Bobby Kennedy and Vivek Ramaswamy. Why does it fall to them? I don't understand. Like, where are the leaders on this? Where is Mitch McConnell? I know he has senile or whatever Mitch McConnell's problems are, closeted, lots of problems. But why can't Mitch McConnell stand up for the country? But he won't. Where's Paul Ryan? He was like Speaker of the House. Not a word. Where's former President George W. Bush? Where's Clinton? Where's Obama? And as you said, where's Biden? It's really scary. They're all in it together.
And there's no demonstration of energy or love for this country. That's one of the obvious features here, because we see, for instance, after the war in Ukraine starts, everyone's wearing Ukrainian flag lapels. You see during the 2020 riots, everybody's taking knees in the Congress to support Black Lives Matter or whatever. You see in the midst of what just happened in Israel, the horrific terror attack on Israel, that they're quick to go to sit down and watch a video of the terror attack to find out even more about what happened there. But I don't see any members of Congress putting together a big theater showing of the people who are being murdered and raped on our border, or the fentanyl that's crushing the country. All I want is just a handful of congressmen to wake up every morning obsessed with how they can fix this country.
And they couldn't care less. And not only do they not care, they're intent on degrading it. But since you brought it up, consider the discrepancy between how criticism of this country is treated versus criticism of other countries. Yeah, I know firsthand that if you criticize Zelensky, our new Churchill, or by the way, if you criticize Churchill, who, like, in my view, wrecked his own country and is long dead anyway, you're attacked as some sort of fascist or whatever. Or you're a bad person for criticizing foreign leaders. But, I like Israel. I'm not against Israel, but people who criticize the Israeli government were like, banned from their own job. They lost their jobs over it. Okay, fine. But what about people who attack America? We've had all these hearings about, people are being mean to a foreign country in college campuses. Really? They burn American flags all the time. They accuse this country of being inherently racist, of being founded on slavery, which is a lie. They accuse it of being, irredeemably immoral every day. And the entire college experience is based on attacking the United States, and that's fine. But criticizing a foreign government is so unacceptable. We have to end free speech. Like, how? Wake up. And by the way, I'm not, taking sides in any foreign conflict, by the way. I really don't have strong enough feelings to do that. I'm an American. I care about this country. And even making that statement, you're like some kind of bigot if you care about your own country. Well, I was born here, and my kids live here. And I just think we're not thinking about any of this correctly.
Right. Well, in case you're wondering how quickly things have changed, it's not just me, it's not just you who's like, man, things have changed really quickly, because there was a Harvard-Harris poll that came out a week ago that asked respondents whether they think that white people are oppressors and that society should be structured around going after that problem. And every single age category thought that that was ridiculous, except 18 to 24. 79% of young people, 18 to 24 adults, think that white people are oppressors and that non-white people and people of certain groups have been oppressed, and as a result should be favored today at both universities and for employment.
Well, you know why they think that? I'll tell you why. Because that age cohort is majority non-white. And this country will be majority non-white thanks to immigration and declining birth rate and life expectancy among the native population, and who are being replaced, of course. So we can argue whether that's a good thing or not, or whether we should be excited about it or not. But what's inarguable is that people who are coming to the United States, including in that cohort, are being taught when they get here that the whites who live here are evil. So you got to kind of wonder how that's going to work out in the end. If you arrive from, Ghana, Nigeria, Haiti, you come to this country, quote, for a better life, and the first thing you learn is the people who built the country hate you and are evil, and all of a sudden in 10 years you're the majority, what's going to happen to those people who have been identified as the devil and the root of all problems, including your personal problems? They're the reason. Like, I don't know, what happened in South Africa? I mean, the people, who literally built South Africa. South Africa had nuclear weapons. I mean, it was a real country, big manufacturing base, huge agricultural sector. It's all gone. And the people who built that are now hounded and murdered. I mean, that's real. And I mean, the numbers show it. There's lots of video of it. I mean, that actually happened. So we know that if you tell people that some group is evil, I think it happened in Europe like 80 years ago too. If you tell people that some group is evil, at some point that group's going to get hurt, physically hurt. And we're all sort of sitting by like, oh, I'm sure this will go away at some point. Or maybe I'm too embarrassed to say anything, but I don't want to be called a white supremacist. Well, I'll just speak for myself. I'm not a white supremacist, and I'm not a racist. And if I was, I'd say so. But I know that the principle never changes, which is if you identify a group as evil, that group's going to get hurt, especially if they're in the minority. So it's totally unacceptable that this is happening, and people should say that.
But at a national level, it feels like too many people have internalized the lie. So you do look around and you wonder, like, why is there all this complacency? What's it going to take to get to the point where you say, I've had enough of this, right? I mean, yesterday, that decision to remove Trump from a ballot, to deprive voters of even having the option, I still think that may very well be the Julie Swetnick of election interference. It's just so ridiculous. You're like, there's no way that's true. There's no way you could possibly do that. But my fear is that people are still going to let this go and think, well, we'll let it all sort itself out.
Yeah, because it's Trump. And so, like, the two principles people watching need to keep in mind are, one, precedent changes on the back of the least popular people in our society. The term that we often used to use is called scapegoat. You pick someone who's unpopular, you attack that person, you change the precedent based on your attack on that person. This is kind of the first that came for so-and-so principle,
right,
that we used to sort of widely recognize. So Trump is hated by half the country or a third of the country or whatever. A lot of people hate Trump. Particularly rich people and powerful people hate Trump for whatever reason, separate conversation, but that's a fact. And so you do it to Trump, and then everyone else wakes up and they're like, but no one will ever do that to me. Okay. Yeah, right. You freaking moron. Right. So that's the first thing to recognize. The second thing to recognize is that every bad thing in this country is done by harnessing our best impulses. So when they want to do something really evil, they don't send, guys in tight uniforms to goose-step down your street. What they do is they convince the women in your household that doing this thing is compassionate. That's exactly what they do. Well, you have to take the vaccine. Well, I don't need the vaccine. I'm a healthy 26-year-old. But yeah, but there are grandparents nearby. And if you love old people, you'll do this. Okay. That's the most effective way to control people, is by harnessing their best instincts, or instincts for compassion and kindness. Well, you can't say anything about the dude on your girls' basketball team, because that would be cruel to dudes like that who want to pretend that they're girls. Okay, I'm not a cruel person. So you have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
That when they appeal to your compassion, your decency, your politeness, your best instincts, those are all great things. They may be trying to subvert those instincts for evil ends. Yeah,
they're exploiting your decency. Our conversation with Tucker Carlson will continue at 5 o'clock. You'll be able to hear part 2 here. We go deep. We go theological. Tucker, in the wake of his time at Fox. In fact, even before he left Fox News, he decided to crack open a Bible for the first time and read it cover to cover. And he explains why today. I ask him about it. and what he's learned. Fascinating part 2 conversation ahead coming up at the top of the hour. As it regards, what's going on with the American people, though, because not all of this is just our leaders suck, which, of course, it is in many ways. But also, there's a lot of complacency in the American people who don't have their eyes open to this. Woke is such a fun term that would be super useful if it actually referred to people waking up to the genuine systems of oppression around them, the tyranny that's really going on. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of people who are still in some sort of catatonic coma, because there's a YouGov poll that just came out, a survey of American adults just released here in the last hour or so. And the question put to these adults, nearly 3,500 of them, is, do you approve of or disapprove of the Colorado Supreme Court ruling that Donald Trump can't appear on the state's 2024 Republican presidential primary ballot because of his actions leading up to the January 6, 2021 takeover of the Capitol, amounting to insurrection or rebellion against the United States? So the question is, do you agree with what the court did by yanking Trump off the ballot? The answer? 54% of those surveyed approve. 54%. 35% disapprove. Well, that's not optimistic, is it? Because it's crystal clear what's going on. This is a deeply authoritarian move by a court done at the behest of the most powerful, wealthiest Democrats in the country to rob you of what they once referred to as democracy. You shouldn't be surprised to hear the Democrats overwhelmingly support it, 84% to 8. Only 8% of Democrats have their eyes open. Republicans, 24% support. Well, that's troubling, too. More ahead. We'll take your calls and Tucker Carlson, part 2, all ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey there, 4:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Today we do it with our friend Tucker Carlson. He'll be joining us. Part 2 of that interview coming up at the top of the hour. Chatted with him a short while ago. We do go deep on what it's been like in the wake of the Fox era. Was he ever officially fired by Fox? Still a kind of a mystery. We talked to him about that. And what has he learned as he's been reading the Bible cover to cover? Any useful lessons for our country? All ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We go to the phones. We've got Sam calling in from Alexandria, line 4. Sam, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, thanks, Vince. I appreciate you taking my call. I'll be short and to the point that, you hear a lot of commentators talk about how the voters are smart. You can't put it by the voters, and they go on and on. Honestly, there is a whole lot of dumb people out there, and whether you call it complacent, whether you call it ignorant or whatever, but as we see with some of these polls, they are saying that the Supreme Court got it correct when the guy's never been indicted on those charges, and they are more than happy to give up their vote to a governmental body of 4 or 5 or 8 and be happy with it. And, yeah, there's a lot of dumb people out there, and I don't give them credit for taking a breath.
Yeah, it's really, it is one of the tough things, the tough pills to swallow is that you do have people, whether it's by virtue of stupidity, which is definitely going to be true in many cases, or it could be that you've just been so thoroughly propagandized that it's hard to even have the vocabulary to navigate your way out, Sam? If your entire world you're constantly surrounded by this kind of left-wing authoritarianism and you never actually have a chance to examine the underlying principles, you're not even really aware that what you're engaging in is a complete and total destruction of this great country.
Yeah, it's self-destruction at its core, and the only way that we can ever hope to get past it is, do like I think DeSantis went on CNN Town Hall last week. Vivek is, of course, well known for going into the lion's den regularly, and we as conservatives, we cannot back down.
I agree. Yeah, Sam, you're breaking up a little bit here, but let me add to your point as hopefully your phone connection gets restored. This is here's the upside. The facts are on our side, Sam. The truth is on our side for sure. So if you love this country and you want to stand up for it, you've got the details to help you do that. That's definitely the case. But the final step is you've got to speak up, whether it's in person on a personal level, among your friends, among the people who don't know what to think about this. Talk to them, navigate through. If your kid is being allured by the left's promises, their empty promises, appeal to their skepticism of institutions. Every single teenager alive goes through some phase of rebellion, right? And the reason kids rebel is because they're trying to test the limits of their own independence. They'd like to be independent. All of us do. We grow up, hopefully all of us do. You grow up and you want to be independent. You want to figure out how you can do this on your own without anybody hand-holding you, right? And so sometimes that rebellion manifests itself in really stupid, radical ways. But when you're talking to these young people, including if they're in your life, encourage them to direct that skepticism at these out-of-control corporations. Are they really doing what they say they're doing? Are they really solving the problems they claim they're solving? Are they really using your money to advance some noble purpose? Like, be skeptical of your parents if you want, but train that energy on all of these institutions who are playing you for a sucker.
You're absolutely right on the mark. Is turn that skepticism, turn that rebellion on its head and say, you know what you're saying now and what you're thinking now? Now imagine that there is a government, the ones that you think that are doing so much for you, that can at any moment take it all away. How do you think about that? It's funny, and I'll close out with this one because I know I've been long. I'm on 495 now, and I was on 495 earlier this week, and I pulled up behind a trailer, and on the back, I looked at it and I took a picture, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And of course, I pulled up next to the truck, and it was from Texas. It said, a government that is large enough to give you everything is large enough to take it all away. Exactly. And I'm like, daggone.
That's Texas. Exactly right. And what happens with every concentration of immense power? It's corrupted. Every time. History has demonstrated that over and over and over again. This is so a good example of this is, of course, literally the healthcare system, or how about the education system? How about colleges? You're looking at the university system that is churning out these cultists, these Democrat zealots are being churned out of institutions that are bankrolled by the federal government. They're raising their tuitions each year well past inflation because of federal tax money. It's the most obvious thing in the world. So sometimes what you'll hear is Democrats will say, what we want is universal child care, right? They'll say universal pre-K. They'll offer that as some grand solution. And it's appealing to a parent. I can see why, as a parent, where you find, the government's going to take care of preschool. I don't have to worry about, paying for that. The government will broadly take care of it. Yes, I'll pay for it in my taxes, but everybody will chip in and it'll be a lower cost to me. Universal pre-K, who could be against it? Oh, and by the way, the government is already engaged in the government schools. They're going from K through 12. So why not a little bit earlier? And the rationale is easy. It's kind of an easy argument to sell. But here's the downside, Sam, what you just laid out, which is the feds then have control of your kids. Or if it's at the state level, the state has control of your kids. And the effect of that is you may be perfectly happy with the curriculum now, but how far are we away from them putting pornography in the libraries and telling your kid that they can change their gender inside of the classroom? And that if you don't agree with that you're abusive and then that child should be taken away from you. How far are we away from that? And so,
I think we already crossed that line, brother, right?
Yeah. No, we have crossed that line for sure in the already existing schools. But this is the argument against expanding the government's power into such an intimate space as the forming of the youngest minds in our society. And so again, if they're big enough to give you everything, they're definitely big enough to take everything. You're totally right. That's a smart bumper sticker. Sam, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Good to talk to you again. Let's see here. We've got Roger calling in from Fairfax now, line 3. Roger, good afternoon to you. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
Good, Roger.
Hey, my whole thing is of Colorado Supreme Court. They're saying Trump going to be on the ballot because he's only had all these accusations against him, okay? Mm-hmm. Nothing's been proven. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, if you look at it, Biden has just as many on him, and they've got impeachment processes going on him now. So why is he allowed to go on the ballot? You know, people in America needs to wake up, see what's going on. Like some of the people in Chicago I've seen a video of. They're starting to see where Democrats are going, and they're starting to fight against it. More Americans need to stand up and start fighting for our democracy. If not, this world is going to be in a lot of trouble real quick.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, look at how many accusations. I mean, I could probably do. I could do whole shows on every accusation. I'd be going for months on all of the things that Biden has been accused of, and incredibly, for instance, I'm not sure if this is impeachable, but it strikes me as definitely criminal. Showering with his daughter at an advanced age, so much so that she says she was sexually warped by the experience, and she said so in her diary. That's firsthand evidence. Of course, the media doesn't care about that. They pretend like that story never even existed. What is that? Or the fact that he made money from all of these foreign countries, and apparently to distort U.S. policy towards them, with some evidence to support that claim, up to and including multiple business partners who say on the record that Joe Biden was absolutely involved in the family's extensive corrupt business, that he was taking money, that his name is on checks. That's been proven. The banks have routinely flagged all of this money flowing into the Biden family as a suspicious activity report in ways that no other American family has ever had to deal with. And so on and on and on, Roger. It's like you and I could probably sit together and come up with, let's say a dozen at least excellent accusations that would warrant removing Joe Biden from any state's ballot based on the standard that they just applied to Trump.
Well, you look how much they're pushing all this electric, all the electric cars, trying to ban gas-powered blowers and all that going electric. But who is the one person that has the most components for the lithium batteries? It's China.
China, yeah. So we're getting sold out there. We're getting sold out on our border. Biden's allowing foreign nationals from every country on the planet to pour across that border, and he's aiding and abetting it. We look back on history, Roger, at Benedict Arnold for selling out the United States by offering the British West Point. He was going to give it up, right? And we consider him rightfully to be a traitor to the United States for doing that. Benedict Arnold. Now we have Joe Biden selling us out by allowing a foreign invading force made up of military-age males to pour into our country by the millions and occupy the country, and we're supposed to just take it. So if you want to establish that he's committing treason, I don't know, the historical parallels seem pretty good. Benedict Biden certainly seems to be what we have in the Oval Office right now. And, if you want to remove him from the ballot, if that's all you need, if you just need an accusation, Roger and Fairfax just made one. Let's game on. That's all we need. And let's remove him from Virginia. Let's remove him from all these ballots across the country. If you're going to have this standard, obviously it's not the standard I want. It's not the standard I imagine you want, Roger. You want the voters to render this judgment. But this is the way the left is operating.
We have a right to speak. They can't silence us. It's time for us to stand up and start making some noise.
That's for damn sure. Thank you for doing your part today, Roger. Really appreciate the call. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince.
I've got Lee calling in now from Woodbridge, Virginia. Line 2. Lee, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I've not heard anyone mention this, but it's something we need to think about and think of it real strong. We've got about 1 million police officers in this country. And we've got 10 times that many illegal immigrants come across the border. What happens if only 10% of them want to do something?
If only 10% of these illegal immigrants want to commit broader crimes, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, and that's one policeman for each one of those, and then they still got 8 million left or 9 million left if something happens to those.
Yeah, and those cops aren't even really allowed to enforce the law, and that includes with American criminals. So now we've got tens of millions of illegals in the country, and as you rightly point out, that state and local police, I just did a quick fact check to verify, as I so often do during the program. You're right. It's just about 1 million people. About 1 million people work as so-called public safety officers in the United States, sheriff, police, law enforcement. And we're looking at tens of millions of lawbreakers who are here in the United States of America, and they've been given, well, effectively amnesty, Lee.
Well, they've been given everything, and then the people say, well, okay, we've got the military to back it up. We've got about a little over 1 million military, so we're still 20% to 80%.
20% to 80% what?
20% enforcement of the law by the military or the police force to 80% of the immigrants, illegal immigrants. I'm not saying they're all bad people,
right?
But 10% of all the people I know are bad people.
Well, Lee, it's a fact. 10% of the people you know are bad people. Well, you're a generous friend. You've got a range of people in your life. And look, we all fall short in various ways. Lee, thank you. I appreciate the call. But Lee's point is well taken. We got 1 million law enforcement officers in the country. They're not even able to do their jobs now with these out of control left-wing prosecutors, left-wing mayors. Don't do that. Don't pick on the criminals. Release them. And these poor cops, you watch what's happening in Washington, D.C. They bust a guy. He's back out on the street. And it is true. When it comes to crime, I just want to reemphasize for the 10,000th time. When it comes to crime, it's always the same people. It's a very small subset of our population. Lee knows a lot of them. He knows 10% of them. 10% of his friends are bad people, he said. Well, he didn't say his friends. He said people he knows. But a very small subset of the population commits all the crimes. In Washington, D.C., what was it, the number that the police chief gave? It was 11 times. Like, people are arrested 11 times before they commit a homicide in the city on average. Hello? Here's your sign. Is that the Jeff Foxworthy thing? Here's your sign. Here's your sign. That should be the indication to you of what's really going on. All right, more from you in a moment, and also more headlines ahead. And Tucker Carlson, Part 2, is up next. It's
every election cycle we talk about this is the most election of our lifetime.
I'm sorry, what? This is the most election of our lifetime? That is our brilliant Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. She was on with Larry O'Donnell last night on MSNBC, and she said, this is the most election of our lifetime. And then she went on to describe the stakes. Here she is.
Every election cycle we talk about this is the most election of our lifetime. Lawrence, this one is. This one is. We are literally talking about.
Literally, which means they're not talking about that.
People who are attempting to divide our country in the most crude, frankly.
Come on. You can't, everything's projection with these people.
And profound way. We are talking about those who are intent and purposeful to attack fundamental freedoms, be it the freedom to make a decision about your own body, the freedom to love who you love openly and with pride.
To make a decision about your own body. You mean like with the COVID jab? Is that what you're talking about? You mean a baby attempting to survive the womb? What are you referring to, making decisions about your own body? To love openly who you want to love? Does that include hugging your dying grandmother in a hospital during the pandemic? Does that include that? During COVID? No, it doesn't. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to openly love your grandmother. No, you have to stay locked outside the building. Wear your mask while you're out there. Maybe you'll get a glimpse of her through the window.
The freedom to be free from fear of violence and hate.
Which is, of course, all over the cities run by Democrats now.
The freedom to just be. The freedom to just be.
Yeah, to just be. She doesn't even know how to end it. She felt like she was on a good riff, and she's like, I got to get in somewhere. So I'm going to say, the freedom to just be. That's what Kamala said. Kamala says Republicans should not be focused on border security.
Let's have a robust debate on immigration, but don't hold the issue hostage. State where you are. Let's work it out. We have offered a plan.
She's up talking because she has no idea what she's talking about.
So, I think that it's very unfortunate, but it actually is more than just unfortunate. It will have real consequence for these folks to play these kinds of games with who we are as America in terms of our role of global leadership. It will have consequence.
Yeah, you should really give her a Guinness World Record for going so long without saying anything of meaning. It's amazing, actually. It's record-setting. Border security? What even is that? Asks the border czar. Don't be focused on that. Let's focus on Ukraine. Coming up, part 2 of our conversation with Tucker Carlson. we get into, well, a little bit on Kamala Harris, actually, and also the Bible. Why is he reading it cover to cover? He explains. That's ahead.